Good morning and welcome to Columbia Business School and welcome to Internet Week. My name is Ava Sieve and I'm an associate adjunct professor here at the school. And today for this session we are speaking about innovation and video on the Internet. For those of you who don't know, this session is sponsored by the Masterclass program here at the Columbia Business School. I just want to tell you a little bit about Masterclasses. These are second-year classes which involve real companies coming to school and trying to solve real problems. And these help our MBAs actually make decisions instead of think about things in a theoretical way. And it's been going on for quite a few years. There's 20 to 40 of these master classes a year. And so we are happy to have a session where we have practitioners and professors talking about various problems. And so, of course, today's video. The way this is going to work is we're going to speak amongst ourselves. I'm going to ask questions and the panelists will attack each other for about 15 minutes. And then we're going to open it up to everyone for questions. And then we'll be finished at exactly 12:15. So first we're going to have the panelists introduce themselves. And let's start with Sri.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Sri Srinivasan. I am Dean of Student Affairs at the Journalism School across the campus. And I'm a technology reporter, and I help run the new media program at the Journalism School. After 15 years, we decided that it's no longer right to call it new media, so we're calling it digital journalism after a very long time. I'm very excited to be here.
Digital journal. I thought you would just call it media, and then call the other guys old media.
That's what we should do.
My name is Steve Rosenbaum. I'm the CEO of Magnify.net. I have been in user-generated media since 1992. If that seems marginally puzzling to you, it is marginally puzzling to me as well. In the early 90s, I became convinced that viewers would become part of the storytelling process, and at MTV, I sold them and produced a series called MTV Unfiltered for 4 years, which now in hindsight turns out to have been a little early. It was all video shot by the audience. They would propose story ideas via an 800 number, and we would FedEx them a camcorder, which they would FedEx back to us, because there was no email and there was no internet. So Magnify, in 2 sentences or less, essentially believes that some of the pain associated with video is actually relatively easy to make go away if you stop thinking about every website in terms of its need to make all its own content. And so, for example, we now work with New York Magazine, Bicycling Magazine, Weather Channel, and 56,000 other sites to help them both upload and publish their own video, which is a small percentage of what they do, and then invite their visitors to make video for them, which is a slightly larger percentage, and then aggregate from the web appropriate video and organize it, which is the largest percentage. And so, just by way of example, if you go to Reader's Digest, owns a site called Taste of Home, and if you go to Taste of Home's video area, you'll see hundreds of extraordinarily good cooking videos, none of which are made by Reader's Digest, but all of which are approved by them. And so this idea of aggregation and curation is kind of what we think the next phase is.
Jeremy.
I'm Jeremy Kagan. I teach marketing on the internet here and some digital media master classes. Sri and I have one next fall that will be media focused. And my background is that I've done some startups in the internet and also worked at IBM in strategy consulting and in interactive advertising in strategy and research. Right now I am involved with a few little startup projects as well and teaching a summer course. So,
Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie DiTralia, and I head up digital research at NBC Universal. NBC is sort of a relatively, in the scheme of things and all the history these guys have, new to the world of digital. I had worked in old media for a while. I did television research for a long time at a bunch of different companies, and then in the late 90s did what everybody was doing, and that was, jump to an internet company. And I got laid off from a couple different places that, went under, and then decided it was time to get back into television. So I came back in, through NBC, and then when we launched this digital media division a few years ago, I went back to do some research there. So it's all about audience measurement for us and how people are using all these different platforms to view our content.
Great. Okay, so let me start off by just setting the stage in terms of if you aren't YouTube, okay? Let's just start with that. So for the most recent monthly numbers that I had and sent to you guys, which is that YouTube delivered about 5.4 billion streams, which is about 57% of all streams of video. And Hulu, on the other hand, which is growing, but Hulu's 4%, and Fox Interactive and Yahoo are each 2%. So if you aren't YouTube, is there any innovation that you can do that will matter? And you can't start. you can do the second, but how about you?
Well, I
What do you
think
think, Jeremy?
the first thing to comment on is it all depends on how you measure it. I mean, the number of streams is one way, but since YouTube does short videos of skateboarding cats, it's not really fair to compare Hulu, which has correspondingly long-form content. And if you talk about the actual minutes consumed, Hulu looks better. Not to make Hulu look good, but that's a more fair metric to use. And that's one of the reasons the actual increase in long-form consumption or medium-form consumption is one of the reasons that the number of minutes people on average are consuming is going up. So you gotta wonder which statistics we're lying with at the time. But in terms of innovation, I think some of what you mentioned regarding curation is very important. I think allowing some of the tools and the ability to remix and mash up the video is really a next wave of technology that's coming out. And some of the ability to embed almost anywhere without even now there's still a little technical difficulty in doing that. And then, of course, from all of our perspectives, I think monetization and the ability to do that is going to be very important.
So what is going on now, Steve? I'm going to let you talk.
So I think YouTube actually is in a really tough spot. I think from a measurement standpoint, the first question is if you think of video as just another medium and compare it, say, to text, and you were to say, well, where's the most text consumed in the universe? It wouldn't be the New York Times. Where would it be? I mean, the phone book maybe, or classified. So volume isn't that interesting. And in fact, while I wouldn't lose any sleep over Google's future, and I think they did the right thing buying YouTube for a whole variety of internal learning reasons, I would say Hulu's one end of the spectrum, which is very high quality, old media organized in a new way. YouTube's the other end of the spectrum, which is lots of little bits of potentially not that interesting video in a messy format. The two things that are going to change in the next 18 months, and the exciting thing about this whole conversation is that the changes are happening so fast, and they're so fundamental to the business we're all going to be in. I think the two things that are changing in the next 18 months to watch are video gathering devices are going to change dramatically. So Sri's going to talk at some point about a number of devices that he's strapped to his body, and and I would suggest this summer that the rumored but not necessarily yet official iPhone video recording device is going to change the world in a dramatic way. And then on the other side, there's this whole internet to the flat screen moment that there's a million people, Boxy's trying to figure out, and any source is trying to figure out, and
So that's innovation in terms of the technology.
But that's what will change the way content is both made and consumed.
Right.
Like, as long as it's a laptop experience, it's going to be primarily geeks. I mean, some version of, even though...
Do you all hear that? You hear that? You're going.
Well, yeah, but truthfully, what's the percentage of laptop penetration in the U.S.? Right? That's the question.
It's pretty high.
Is it, though?
It's about 40.
You mean computer or laptop?
Yeah, computer
It's about
laptops.
40 now.
So as a viewing device, but I don't think anyone would tell you that a laptop is a great television viewing device. Apple's tried to reinvent their one-piece flat screen to be essentially a TV. They're sneaky about that with front row. I guess, to me, the thing that's exciting is that if you think about video like text, and you realize that video is going to be everywhere and on every page and in every service, then comparing Hulu to the video that's being made of this talk, they're not the same medium. They're totally different. And the video that Sri's going to record is going to be another whole flavor of that.
Right. Now, I think, yeah, okay. So, but let's get specific. You're being really general about innovation. So, Sri, what do you see out there now that's going on?
Well, I think they framed it correctly, that it is beyond looking at just the platforms where you see it. It's also in how people are gathering and deploying video and where they're getting it and where they're viewing it. So since he alluded to it, let me just show you a couple of things.
Okay.
The most interesting product that I have seen in the last few years, apart from the obvious more famous things like the iPhone and things, is the flip camera. How many of you here have a flip camera or no? Look at this around you. This is incredible, right? I don't know if the camera can capture it, but this is, we're talking at least 20 people in this room, if not more. And the flip has really changed the way people record video. the thing is that it's not about the recording of the video, though, because everybody can record. You can have an $800 camera, but once you have the flip, the magic was that you could share it a lot easier than any other product before that. Otherwise, all the great videos you took sat in your closet or in a desk drive somewhere. So the magic of Flip, as I think everybody here who has one knows, is the connector. Not the fact that they say, oh, it's a USB connection. It's not a connection, it's a connector. The connector makes it possible to upload and send this to grandma in a few minutes, as opposed to waiting for the perfect video that the $800 camera would do. So if you're curious about this, it's at theflip.com. This last statistics I saw, they sell more than 25% of the camcorder market on Amazon is this without a single ad. And most dramatically, you may have heard that Cisco bought this for $560 million after the bubble burst and everything. I mean, this was in the last few months, not pre-September 15th. So, and the reason that this is so interesting is, again, the kind of passion that it inspires. John Chambers, the CEO of Cisco, bought some for his family, liked it, and then went and bought the company.
And we heard that somewhere before.
So my point is, think about how they're coming out with new cameras, and this is not going to be permanent as the best of this genre. There are going to be a lot of other things that are going to be coming out. But two things, they're constantly innovating even at this level. This particular camera is it feels like double the size of their more popular Minnow version. But the innovation here is that this is also HD, has an HD out, so the quality of video is very good. And then what I really like about this is you can charge it by plugging it in like you can your iPhone, but it also comes, let's say you're in a place where you have no electricity for months or for a month, any number of AA batteries can also be put in. So look at the amount of innovation in one product that's about $150, $200. And different sizes and different colors. And the fact that it's available in pink was very exciting to my mom, for example. So,
And so because of the internet, this product is so popular. I mean, obviously, if you had no place to show it or share it,
right,
the idea of video as a mass cultural thing just would not be there.
Absolutely. And,
right.
And
okay.
You're seeing that. And one more
right.
thing, and I make no money from any of the products I do. Now, the other thing, am wearing a camera, and this is so new that I don't even know how to pronounce the name of it, and that's something that I need to check. So it's spelled VIEVU, and bad spelling is a hallmark of all Web 2.0 products, as you know. But VIEVU is a wearable video camera, and you could just wear it and walk around, look like an idiot, but you could be recording in color and audio everything that we do. So I will put up this video.
It's recording now.
It's recording right now.
You're making a lot of people seasick by
Exactly. It's not bad. What I think their main market was, they envisioned it, is for police officers to wear this and walk around, dashboard-mounted cameras, extreme sports, things like that. So it'd be interesting to see how this goes. Again, the spelling is VIEVU, and the other one's theflip.com. But there are so many other new cameras coming out, and as you said, the Apple iPhone video version, whenever that comes.
The rumored, but the reason why I think the technology matters is we know how to make entertainment programming, right? I mean, that's pretty much a known, we know how to do Seinfeld, we know how to do 24. But what these things are going to change, and the one thing that doesn't change is we all have a limited number of hours in the day other than work and sleep and taking care of our kids or whatever. So what these things change is the volume of non-entertainment content that is likely to populate the web in the next 3 years. And the battle becomes, do I watch the third repeat of Law & Order, or do I watch, well, as an example. So I was at a college class a couple of weeks ago, and I was trying to build a Magnify channel very quickly, and I said to this classroom, invent the most esoteric thing you can come up with, and we'll build it. And the first kid said yoga, and I said, no, try again. Then there was a music band, and I'm trying to get knitting, and I'm trying to get really granular. And finally, a kid in the back of the room raises his hand, and he goes, foosball. And I'm like, foosball, there you go. We'll build a foosball channel. So we go on to Magnify, and we type in foosball just to make sure there's no other channels in our 56,000 channel universe. And unfortunately, there were already 4. And did you know that there's hardball foosball and cork foosball, and they're both professional, and they both had hundreds of videos published. So you can imagine that camera sitting in a foosball table a whole lot soon. And so I think the narrowness and the kind of granularity of content is the thing that surprises people and is likely to get even more granular.
Right. Okay, I want to change the subject a little bit. I want to talk about measuring. So Julie, who is really an expert in this, about measuring that video, online video, TV video, and some of this other kind of niche stuff. What's going on? What's happening now?
I mean, it's definitely a challenge. The thing that's most difficult is that we're in the business of obviously monetizing our video, which I think has been, as mentioned before, YouTube's challenge. They have a tremendous amount of traffic, and they lost a tremendous amount of money last year. And
that's not your goal, right?
Not our goal. Our goal is not to lose money, and we're okay. We haven't really mastered it yet, but. What the problem is that there's no consistent measurement or currency like there is in television. So Nielsen, TV metrics, act as both the measurement for the audience of who's watching television and the currency by which we get paid by advertisers. So for digital, it just doesn't work the same way. And frankly, Nielsen is a metric that's existed for 50 years now, and it was built as sort of a surrogate because they couldn't get the granularity of the measurement really needed to measure the audience to an exact commercial. You can do that in online, but there's 20, 30 different companies in the space. So we have our own internal metrics. We use a web analytics company called Omniture, and many do. There's a bunch of competing companies out there. But that's not what we charge our advertisers on. They're ultimately still charged on what is served out of an ad server. So they're guaranteed a number of impressions, not people, but impressions of their ads, and then that's what they pay us on. We can't, at the moment, really target by demo. We're working on a bunch of ways to target. Advertisers want to be able to buy and understand how online video works the same way that they do television. And there's companies like Nielsen and ComScore who are in the space trying to measure this stuff, but again, they're really more used, just like on the traffic side, as ways to compare against other sites, run a ranker on a specific demo. They're all panel-based research, which just doesn't work as well online because in television you have a limited number of channels that you can see. The internet is obviously infinite, and people have very disparate usage of it. So, there could be someone who is the same gender and age and economic status as you and life stage, and they act completely different online than you do, but you may watch a lot of the same TV shows. So it's really very difficult. We always say it is sort of like the Wild West, and I've been doing this for a few years, and it hasn't really gotten much better. It's just there's more options and there's more people in the space. So we have to therefore invest in a lot of different places to help us understand how this works. And our biggest challenge is that most of our clients want to be able to buy online video the way that they buy television. They want to be able to say, okay, I buy a GRP, which is a gross rating point on television, which gives them a sense of both reach of their campaign and frequency that it's seen. They want to do that online. And there are companies out there who are offering that, these sort of big video aggregators who are offering that. We can do it. For us, ours is a 360 sell. So you buy The Office on television, you buy it online, and that media moves different parts of a campaign. So it's not really a reach play because we're not necessarily extending the reach of The Office by offering it online because you're getting those viewers on TV too. So this is a very long way to say that there continue to be a lot of challenges, and I'd say one of the biggest problems is that for any of these research companies, we have to place a tag on our websites, which means you put a piece of code on your video or on your page, and that calls to a vendor, and they take that information that they're getting and they translate it to whatever metric they use. It's a huge burden. For me, if I could control it, I would just tag everything. It wouldn't be a problem. But there's always concerns on the site side of slowing down performance. Of, we do a lot of surveys on our sites. Consumers don't necessarily like those. They do answer them though, and that's how we get a lot of information. But therefore, again, the immediacy of internet measurement makes it much more flexible, and you can have a one-to-one conversation with the person who's viewing your content. But at the same time, it's almost like there's too many options, and the industry is going to take a very long time to decide on what is going to be a standard metric or currency, because it's not viewer to viewer. When you talk about streams, as we were saying, those streams aren't people, and they're not equivalent necessarily to a view of a 30-second television commercial. And many of most of YouTube doesn't really have any pre-roll in there either.
Right.
I actually disagree with that a little bit, because I think I'm a glass half full type of guy. I think that there's two myths there. First of all, I think there is a lot of measurement online that is valuable. You have to take it for what it's worth. But a lot of the networks that are out there aggregating video reach a lot of the internet universe. And they're doing a great job of trying to come up with equivalents of GRPs and stuff that advertisers are familiar with. The major difference on the internet is the video being consumed is different. Short form video is not the same as a 22-minute program with 8 minutes of commercials. So trying to compare them is really not even fair to online video. And the Interactive Advertising Bureau has done a pretty good job of trying to standardize measurement. The real issue, I think, is that TV and a lot of old media tend to glamorize the standards that they've accepted for 50 years, which are really flawed deeply. And actually, at least in the internet, we can see the warts. In Nielsen, for example, they're measuring households that have set-top boxes. This undercounts college kids, it undercounts minorities, it undercounts a whole range of people. It's the equivalent of the Dewey defeats Truman newspaper headline where they took a survey by telephone and only rich people had phones. It's a silly example, but it's very true that in the past with 3 major networks, the error of undercounting one show and overcounting another really kind of equaled out in the end on who got paid by what advertising.
No, I completely agree. I mean, in fact, what I was really trying to say about is that we shouldn't find a way for the internet to match Nielsen. Nielsen is flawed. Nielsen television, not to mention their online, is flawed in a million different ways. And in fact, I've seen plenty of examples of small cable networks. It's just still a small panel. It's now, I think, 14,000 people in the panel, representing over 100 million households. And it's allegedly representative, but Nielsen has a million issues. And there are times with cable networks where they'll see a specific demo go off the cliff, and they can't explain it. And it's because one person in the demo has gone on vacation or unplugged their Nielsen box to plug in their Christmas tree lights. It happens every year. It's absolutely true. But everybody trusts it because it's Nielsen and it has existed for so long. And now they're trying to find a way to sort of jerry-rig the internet metrics to match an already flawed system, and it just doesn't work that way.
But the advertisers do pay on it, which is really the key.
Yes.
Right, so what I wanted to ask was going on a sales call, actually, because now you've got all this stuff, and there's going on a sales call now, and then there's going on a sales call, let's say 2 years from now, ideally what would you have. So right now, when someone, you go to CP&G or whatever, and there's a big brand, and they want to buy across the board, what is it that the salespeople can present that's useful, and is it working for you, and what would you prefer?
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely works for us. I mean, we do a lot of cross-platform deals, so the television people will go with a digital person, and the advertiser will buy, both platforms. And what they go out with is our internal metrics that show level of traffic. We do a lot of our own custom research where we, especially when it comes to our long-form content online, our full episodes, where we have. We do testing for each advertiser, so we can say, what branding metrics are moved by those people who see the ad online. We also do research that shows exposure to TV only, online only, and TV plus online, and that you see the bars go up like this in terms of those metrics. So we have a lot of stuff that sort of shows them that this thing is effective, and then we have some best practices to help them tailor their campaign to work better online, specifically in this environment that we have, and which Hulu has, which ABC has, which is long-form content where they own an episode. If you go on NBC.com to watch a full episode of The Office, you'll see one advertiser for the most part. We do have a few options now. And that's really, we do have a lot of data to demonstrate that this really works. When you spread your message, if you've decided to, as an advertiser, affiliate yourself with X show, be in that show everywhere. And we do this on mobile as well. And that's the data we show. It's really this sort of content 360 story.
Right.
Because you can't deny the power of television as, a reach vehicle and an ability to mass a huge audience. And then our websites are not, we don't get nearly the amount of viewers on the websites, but they're very specific viewers. They're huge fans, and they're going to interact with a lot of other content. And that fandom sort of also translates to the campaign, and it yields these better branding metrics for the advertisers.
Sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead.
But I want to go back a step, because I actually believe what's changing is more fundamental than any of the day-to-day business challenges that we face. I mean, let's take a step back to the invention of television and realize that, national brands were created because there was a national advertising mechanism. So if you look at the brands that have grown in kind of the post-mass media era, what you see is they're not using mass media. I mean, look at Starbucks. They don't buy TV. If you talk to the Starbucks guys, they say, we are a network. You walk into our store, that's the network experience. They don't spend any money on national advertising. A little bit now. Same thing with Google. We just did a deal we're announcing actually today with a company called Etsy. Etsy?
Yeah.
So it's this incredibly cool $80 million crafts company in Brooklyn.
Oh, right.
That does these tiny little storefronts for craftspeople who want to make little handmade collections of things and want to make a living selling directly to customers. One of the things I think that we're facing is that we're potentially in a moment in which mass media won't ever be able to be put back together again. And you can pull together all the metrics you want, but the reality is you're not going to get huge numbers of people to do the same thing at the same time, which is a great way to sell a national brand.
Right, but you still have companies who need to make that decision and not 1,000 different decisions, every day. They need to make a decision.
But if I were them,
Yeah.
I would be ripping my hair out what's left. No, because essentially you used to, think about how wonderful it was when you could buy network television.
Right.
Should I buy ABC or NBC? Okay, I can go to lunch now. What a great, valuable, amazing thing that was. And now, as much as they'd like to stop this, nichification of the world, it's just speeding up.
Yeah.
And so trying to I think that there's an opportunity for certain big packaged goods companies to try and re-aggregate, if you will, the audience. But when I look at the viewing patterns, particularly of my 19-year-old, you're never going to find him. He's moving way too fast. And he likes this kind of noisy, random, unbranded. Although I do have to say he's an awfully big fan of Hulu Desktop. He told me that. He was pretty impressed with that.
It's a new service that was launched in the last week, right?
Yeah, and he's all over it. All his friends are too. So
advertisers are looking for consumers, though. They're not looking for. It was great to be able to buy the Super Bowl and get the whole country, but that's really not the point. If you can aggregate up 1 million niche channels, and everyone still needs to buy shampoo, or at least we hope, everyone has certain basic needs that are still mass needs. The niche products will have an easier time of just reaching who they want. Maybe the advertising gets more efficient, but it doesn't stop the need for Pepsi or Coke to try to hit everybody. And so it's not about buying necessarily a primetime show. It's about, can I reach those consumers, which is why the reach numbers were really important. And while fragmentation, maybe it's the end of the age of mass media and the superstar, but it won't necessarily be the end of national brands for that reason.
Right.
And that's also the beauty of the internet, the ability to target. We have advertisers who want to target people, in market for a car, or even buy a specific shampoo, so you can market them another shampoo or the conditioner that goes with it.
Right.
And that's the sort of thing you can do with behavioral targeting online.
Right, versus demos.
Wait. So one last thing. So if you compare Google's advertising business to the network television advertising business, they really do totally different things. Not the Google newly acquired stuff, but they're essentially direct marketers. So when somebody raises their hand and says, looking to buy a new car, or whatever they express intent in that search bar, they've got the low-hanging fruit. Oh, you're looking to buy a car. Here's an ad.
Right.
Those of us who don't have that have a much more, we have to figure out a metric to say, this person who's looking at a site that has car videos, who came from this other car video site and is going here, if we can follow them a little bit, we can put together a story that says, hey, it looks like they're on a journey to buy a car. That's hard to do. That's what we're all struggling with is there a way, without violating privacy issues, to get a sense of what people are doing on the web, other than typing into a search bar, I want to buy a car, because, intent's really powerful. That's what we love.
I wanted to ask about the students who are coming through the journalism program. Now, it looks like there's so much video out there. It used to be that it was very text heavy. I know historically there's very little TV that went on there. And now I can't imagine that you would ever graduate or get through school without absolutely, positively having to know about this video stuff. And does this mean more employment at lower rates for your students, or does it mean no employment because it's so much of user-generated stuff?
Well, this is a fascinating situation for places like the journalism school, where, as you know, in tough economic times, people do go back to school, but our applications are up 40%, which is not explained by the recession. It's explained by the fact that young people are idealistic and want to learn new skills and want to do things, and they might be interested in the Columbia Poetry Program gets lots of applications, or oil painting or whatever. People want to do things that are not necessarily directly related to whatever is going on in the job market. To your question specifically about video, we are in a way having all our students learn how to do video, and more than video, we also teach them how to do audio slideshows, which are very popular online. But the conflict for some of our students is they want to be writers with a capital W.
Yeah.
And they want to go work at the New Yorker, and there aren't that many jobs at the New Yorker, because so many places are changing. But we believe that quality, well-told storytelling is going to have a market, and that's how we stay in business.
Right. So from a video standpoint, I mean, that's another technique for your students.
Yeah,
but
that's right. And you have
Right.
to learn how to do it, because the video is really where you're also going to be able to get more money from advertisers, because you can charge a higher CPM
Right.
for video.
Right, right. So to change the topic a little bit, we've mentioned, of course, Google like 8,000 times. So let's talk about searching for video, which is really problematic, and I would think would hurt our ability to make money off of video if you can't actually find it. So I was wondering if, I know that your business is based on that, and then Julie, I would like maybe there's something you could talk about there, but could you tell a little bit about what's going on in search for video?
So over the weekend, I decided I was going to buy a new still camera. And so I started trying to search online to get some answers about the still camera I wanted, and found that there was a lot of text, but it was mostly stuff written at press events, and it wasn't very analytical. So then I ended up on YouTube, and I typed in the name of the still camera, and I got a bunch of unboxing videos, which are kind of neat and kind of fun to watch, like hardware porn. But there's
I don't know what that is.
Tell what's in it, yes.
Somebody gets a new thing, and they videotape themselves opening the box, and it's strangely fun to watch. I'm not sure why. And they take each piece out, and then they talk about the experience they hold, and you get a sense of what the camera feels like. But there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of
Of the
unboxing-
camera you were
yeah,
interested in?
hundreds of unboxing videos,
Oh my gosh.
of which a handful of them are really actually well done and interesting and thoughtful, and lots of them are not very good. So that's where aggregation comes in, right? One of the reasons why I think Google doesn't end up owning the universe is that technology really only takes you so far. And if I said, what's an appropriate video for Oxygen versus BlogHer versus Bravo, there's really no artificial intelligence answer to say, we're going to look for certain. I mean, there's a qualitative piece which says these videos feel right in this space. And so, we're working on a demo right now for J&R, the downtown electronics guys, and I found myself watching a bunch of unboxing videos and picking 4 that were really good, and realizing that I had just provided a service to the ecosystem, because they were serious photographers who'd done a good job, and it wasn't 12 minutes long, they were 4 or 5 minutes. And once you put them inside a little box and say, here are 4 videos that answer this question, then it adds a level above search, which is curation and aggregation. So, you're hearing this, I mean, when you start to look out in the world, you realize that lots of people do this, right?
Right.
I mean, certainly it's what Huffington Post does. Certainly it's what Daily Beast does. Certainly you could make the argument there's a whole piece of the New York Times in its current relatively new incarnation that's about bringing in feeds from different sources and choosing which blogs to feature and putting comments from the blogs in the paper, which I always find kind of odd. But I think that there's likely to be, as the world gets noisier, the number of places you go inevitably has to get smaller. And I think that if you ask people in this room, they probably all go to 5 or 6 websites on a regular basis. They've got habits that are based on...
So, but still the broad use of search for video.
Technically,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, technically, it's not there yet. One of the things about text search that's wonderful is we can get almost what we want. Although, if you search, I use the example, if you search on the word model on Google, you still get some very different things depending on what you're looking for. You can get swimsuit models or financial models, and there's no way for the computer to know unless you add information.
Right.
With video, you have the same problem. Video search is actually powered by the surrounding text primarily.
Yeah.
The only other real way for search to understand what's in video is for somebody to watch it, somebody to tag it, somebody to curate it. Even as simple as just watching it and voting thumbs up is a popularity function that allows Google, which may not know anything else about the video, to know that somebody liked it. And so it's the metadata in some ways around it that's about usage. That's really the only other layer besides the human level of curation. So video, in one sense, still has a vast editorial need that is it's great news for brands because they provide that. The technology is getting better and better. We have facial recognition technology, but it's still difficult for images and video to be scanned with any sort of level of accuracy that we need.
Right.
And that's really the major problem in search, I'd say.
Right.
By the way,
And it's
don't
interesting-
underestimate tagging. It's stunning to me how well tagged things are on the web. I I mean, people take it almost feels like some community, like picking up the trash when you walk down the street. If you see something like there's huge tag clouds around videos that'll go up. 2 hours later, there's 50 tags around them. Like, really? Who's
Well, the
doing
problem
that?
is, first of all, that's very good, and it's popular now. But as people try to get their own videos popular, they'll use common tags, and they'll essentially make them as useless as meta tags were, made useless with regular search. That's not happened yet, and it's still not a quality judgment as well.
Nope.
Right.
And I'd say just from our perspective, we spend a lot of time making sure that all of our video is cataloged and tagged and search friendly so that, Heroes video surrounds the video on the text end so that we can get picked up by Google, because we do know that, it has been a challenge, especially for Hulu, a startup company that in the last year has done a lot online to get people to come to this website. What really drove traffic to Hulu, however, was their Super Bowl campaign and their TV campaign, which is ironic. And that's what really, sort of drove it to a different level. But it's a difficult lesson to teach people to sort of move away from YouTube, to find the content they're looking for on a site like NBC.com, which gets a fraction of that traffic, and then Hulu, which is growing, but still a fraction of the YouTube traffic.
Right.
And for something like, we saw this with Saturday Night Live in the fall, with Tina Fey doing all the Sarah Palin clips. We're also now in the business of distributing our content. So it's professionally produced content that we can monetize. It lives in a widget that people can take, and we can send to Huffington Post and send to the New York Times and send to all these professional websites, and then people can grab them and put them on their Facebook pages. And that was huge distribution, especially for those clips. And then each successive week, we saw the traffic from those widgets, it grew because those clips became sort of a phenomenon. But we also saw traffic to the website grow, and we were hitting records every week that she was on because people learned at some point to come at NBC.com. Now they've stopped learning that lesson because SNL comes back again, and they go see these clips, and we see the traffic sort of back to where it was. So people forget easily that, I can get that video there, and then you have to sort of teach them all over again. So you have to make your video visible to the search engines, and then do as much outreach as you can, whether on television or elsewhere on the web, to remind people that you can find this video here.
Right, which is pretty ironic that you have to do non-online.
television.
Right,
But
you
I
do
would
it
just
everything.
say that the Hulu campaign is irreverent. It's kind of anti-TV. It's got Alec Baldwin. It's got Dennis Leary.
TV stars.
Yeah, but TV stars who are they're not the kind of standard TV stars.
And it's
They're
unbelievably well written. Whoever.
Very
yeah,
smart ads which work with online audiences. In fact, they're maybe a little too clever for the TV world. I mean, they're aimed at people who use computers in that sense. The other thing that I'm curious is, maybe you can tell us, YouTube is now scared, right? So they've done /TV/movies, I think it's called, where they're trying to put longer form quality programming on there. How much are you worried about YouTube going the long form route? Because now they have, hundreds of movies. Soon it'll be thousands of movies. And
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a concern. I mean, we have a whole group that spends a lot of time pulling down our content from, the pirated content from YouTube. But however, we also want to find a way to sort of get those people that go to YouTube to find the clip to then say, you can find this at NBC.com, and YouTube's not really into that idea. But yeah, certainly it's a threat. They have a huge audience, and when they do have professionally produced content, because a lot of the stuff you find, obviously people are going there for all the user-generated stuff, but they're going to find the Daily Show clip they missed last night, because they know you're going to find it's all in one place. You can see full episodes. Maybe the quality's not quite as good. Maybe people don't care. So it certainly is a concern, which is why, we, along with a couple other companies, launched Hulu in the first place, just try to, ebb that flow a little bit. But there's such a built-in audience for YouTube that it is going to be interesting to see if it translates to a place where people know that they can get high-quality produced content that they can monetize. And they probably can. I mean, I don't think Hulu's that far out there that, you can't grab some other audience.
So I actually think they have nothing to worry about from YouTube.
And why is that?
Oh, good.
So I'll tell you a story.
take that to the bank.
I'll tell you an interesting story. So back in a former life, I was a filmmaker, and I made a film about 9/11 called 7 Days in September, and it played on A&E and played in theaters. And after it had a couple of years on the shelf, I decided I wanted to put it on the internet. And so I contacted my friends at Google, and I said, I don't want to make any money on this. I'd just like to share it. Can we do it for the anniversary? And we did a deal with them that we were going to premiere this film on the internet, I think it was 2 anniversaries ago. And they were going to put a press release out, and it was going to be on their homepage for 4 or 5 days, and it was all very nice. And about 10 days before the anniversary, I got a call from somebody, and they said, can we take the comments feature down? And I said, why? They said, we really think people are going to put up political stuff around this film. We think people are going to talk about the U.S. and its role, and we're really uncomfortable with this political discussion that we think is going to happen around this film. And the film's not political at all, by the way. And I said, do you understand why people make content? We like that. We want there to be a discussion about this. That's what filmmakers do. And they said, yeah, we know, but not comfortable with that. Let's take the comments feature down. And I've since watched, I've had more people tell me that they want the community elements around YouTube filtered or managed or curated. And Google has consistently said, we're not in that business. We're not in the community management business. We don't want to determine, we'll manage copyright because we know that we can determine whether you own something or not. But anything that is more granular than that, about tone or, people acting inappropriately, they really don't. And I think that if you pulled the brain off NBC and the brain off YouTube and looked inside, you see one company that really cares about its audience's experience, and another company that says, we really want this to be a technology play. And I really think it comes down to, at the end of the day, can content be a technology play? Or do people say, and as people grow up and they have less free time and they graduate from college and they now need to narrow their focus of content a little bit, can they really afford to be in this random world of lots of things coming at them? Or do they say, you know what, I'd like a slightly more packaged version of that world? And I think that plays well to the content managers in the universe.
And that people are willing to pay because, in fact, theoretically, of course, they don't break it out, that Hulu actually makes some money from its website, and we know YouTube is definitely in the red on this.
Well, and people pay for iTunes.
Right.
I mean, iTunes is, it's the light at the end of the tunnel for all of us in the content space.
Right.
I mean, it's a big question for us, obviously, as a more traditional media company. Is we study a lot about users' behaviors and consumption of media and how how people watch television, how people use the stuff online, and there is a big generational difference and life stage difference. But the question is, there's this whole generation of people who are used to getting content everywhere and don't mind about watching TV on their iPhone. And the question is, do they take those behaviors with them as they age? And it's something that we just don't know. And sort of, you have kids, you're maybe not going to be out as much and therefore not on your mobile phone. But we do find people using their mobile phone in their homes. So we have to be prepared to be everywhere because we just don't know how specifically this millennial generation is going to evolve as they age. Because we do find, you mentioned before that don't most people want to watch TV on a big TV screen? Yes, that's true. And TV viewing is up, regardless of what you hear that TV's dead, it's hugely fractionalized and people are using DVRs and there's a lot more television channels than there ever were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, et cetera, even 2 years ago. But on a whole, people are watching more television than they were even last year. However, we do find that among younger generations, the affinity for the big TV screen is less ingrained. So it's not a big deal for them. And it also depends on the show. If it's a sporting event, yeah, you want the big screen. If it's The Office, you can watch it, on your cell phone or whatever it is. So, it's a big question for us and, how we evolve to.
I want holograms.
There's a couple of different product quality issues, though. You have some different quality issues here, and it's almost interesting because you're looking at not just the quality of the content, which is both the talent-based and the production values. And if it's high-quality content, you're going to want to see it in the highest quality place, given other things. If I miss a particular program and I can't get it on television again, I'll watch it on the web to catch up. But the web experience is a much smaller window, much lower quality. It's not going to be a differentiator to be a high-quality production values as much on the web. And on a mobile phone, it's even worse. You've got all of that going on, but people are investing thousands of dollars in their digital living rooms, and we all talk about convergence, but until I can watch the same experience other than the location and the device itself, then it's really not going to be fair to say, are they learning those behaviors? We don't know because it's a changing yardstick right now.
Right. Well, I would like us to talk a little bit about the streaming from the Netflix, from the computer, then we have the TV that can pick up the signal from the computer, so that in fact you can completely have this experience. It's internet, but it's not really. You're really seeing it on TV.
But it's complicated too. Nobody wants to think about how they have to hook this up and that. You said it was a connector, not a connection. That's actually important. When people didn't know whether HD, DVD, or Blu-ray was going to win this war that we created, they just didn't buy anything because it was too confusing. The iPod wasn't the first music device. It wasn't even nearly the first music device. It was just the one you didn't have to think about. So people said, okay, now I can buy. It's one price for a track. I plug it in and it works. I didn't have to worry if I had a compatible this or the right rights for that. And people underestimate the fact that, especially now when money is tight, people are willing to wait before investing in something that's going to be out of date. Similarly, you have the cable companies who really, they're very concerned with making the experience their own little box. The mobile companies, until the iPhone, they're very concerned with their walled platform. It makes the experience less interesting and less people use it.
Right.
It's very simple.
Right.
Consumers vote with their feet when they get the opportunity.
Right. Right.
Or their eyes, I guess.
I don't know how I
That
ended up
analogy.
being this historian on this panel, but this is a
Because
fun
you're incredibly old.
That's correct. Touche. But it's worth remembering how cable was invented. I mean, cable was the ultimate, piracy as an industry. It was invented because a bunch of guys on a hill decided the people in the village couldn't get a good quality signal, so they wouldn't put a dish up or an antenna up and stole the signal out of the air and dragged it down on a cable and then wired the houses up. And, so when people, it's interesting to watch the cable guys get all worked up about over the top, people trying to root around cable. Like, guys, that's what you did. But one of the things that's worth paying attention to is the interesting dynamic at NBC between the huge revenue that it gets from cable subscriptions and Hulu, which is not owned by NBC, right? It's a partnership.
We were part owner.
Right. But so there's this dynamic which says we want to make sure we're on the web, but we also don't want to damage our relationship to our cable operators because there's hundreds of millions of dollars at stake. And if people actually start to get incentivized to cut their cable bill because they can cherry pick essentially the network. I mean, I don't envy that balancing act. That's really tricky.
Luckily, I don't actually have to do it, but it is true, and you'll find that for a lot of our cable properties, we don't do, on NBC.com and therefore on Hulu, anything that goes up on our NBC Universal sites goes up on Hulu. We don't do a ton of full episode cable stuff because of those, MSO relationships, because, people have to pay for cable. Why are we giving it away for free online? So it's pretty limited, and there are specific negotiations around that. But at the same time, all of our research shows that having the stuff online breeds fans of a show and ultimately feeds the television. We did a lot of research around the Beijing Olympics. We found that all the people who use these multiple platforms to get that content watched a lot more television, like double television.
So ultimately, it does seem like it's advertising dollars, so you can.
And if you take this stuff off, and the CW tried this experiment last year with Gossip Girl, they were, we have this argument all the time. There's plenty of people at NBC who say, why are we putting this stuff online? And the CW did this with Gossip Girl. They were especially concerned because obviously there's a young audience to this show that is likely to go online and watch it. And they said it's killing our rating. It's a very low-rated show that happens to get a lot of hype and buzz. So after the writer's strike last year, when the show came back for its limited, second, it was like 5 episodes in the spring, they said we're not going to make it available online. Well, if you went to the message boards, which I did, in the spirit of research, there were all these comments, and fan of the show, what can I say? There were all these comments. People were annoyed, to say the least, that they had taken it down. There are plenty of people who don't have access to a television all the time and want to be able to watch the show. Well, the CW's experiment sort of worked and sort of didn't, because the ratings actually went up from where they were in the fall. But they couldn't isolate that growth to the fact that they weren't available online. And in fact, they know that they pissed off a lot of fans. So what they decided to do was put the show back online when it premiered again in the fall of, 08, I guess. And guess what? The ratings went up again. So, they're really, what it proved is that there really is no correlation that you can really directly tie between the availability online and the show on television. And in fact, from all of our research, we see that, there probably is some level of cannibalization, that there's probably certain people who are purposely not watching on TV because they know it's available online, and therefore you've lost that rating. And we make more money on TV than we do online for that single viewer. However, we also get a lot of people who are able to keep up with the show because we make it available. Why make it hard for people to watch your show? It's hard enough to get people to watch television. Why would you make it harder for them to see your show by not making it available everywhere? And then you get people who sample stuff online, that they hadn't seen before. It's really easy. You're in Hulu, you see this other thing, let me watch the show. You like it, you're going to watch it on TV next week.
We don't know whether it's cause or effect, though. Are the
Right.
early adopters the ones who are doing it and would have done it anyway, or is it an effect of making it available that people come back? I mean,
Exactly.
the only analogy we have is DVR usage with pay TV. Like you can watch True Blood on HBO, and their ratings go way up if you count all the DVR viewings, which are, I think, available for a limited time after that episode. But what we found, at least there's anecdotal research that says if it's a show like Lost or 24, where it's the storyline moves along and it's not just a sitcom where every
Stands
episode
on
is
its own,
independent,
yeah.
then it helps a lot because people who miss those first 6 episodes and their friends say it's great, they don't want to invest the time unless it's easy.
Right. So now we're going to open up for questions. So if you could please just identify who you are, and if you're with a company or some other affiliation, if you could let us know, that would be great. So do we have any questions? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Geo Keller, I'm with my own company. So I have a couple of questions here. First of all,
Well, how about one question? So let's start with one.
I just want to ask a journalist or in the audience or journalist students. I was just wondering if there was some journalists here. Raise your hand.
There are a few.
Yeah.
Just a few. I just wanted. Yeah. So the question is, we're looking at the future of video and its potential in journalism. It's one of the thoughts I thought this was going to be about. And I'm wondering, and listening to Steve there, that maybe he has a little piece of the future of journalism and video on journalism, because he's been aggregating that voice and inviting people into the conversation rather than just being a spectator. So I was wondering what you both thought about that.
So I'll tell you just one story. So we put up yesterday a website with this. We partnered with the City of New York, and we put up internetweek.tv, and it's driven off their Internet Week site for this entire. And we basically, at every event, suggested to them. It got put together relatively late, but the idea was anybody who's got a camera and who's videotaping could put their material up. So I got done with a day's worth of events last night, and there were 50 videos that had been submitted, and they were all pretty darn good. And as a way to kind of crowdsource coverage of what is a very diverse event with lots of locations, it's still early days, but I think that there's a fear. If you're a brand, I think the fear of letting the audience make content is that somehow people will make stuff that's inappropriate. When you get to the news space, it's a whole lot easier to say it's better to have more coverage of multiple events than it is to have less. And that's part of why I'm so interested in how the iPhone changes things, because I think, as much as I adore the Flip and have 3 of them, it still needs to get plugged in. And so, listening to the guys from AT&T talking about the next generation Wi-Fi network that they're theoretically building on top of the one that's not very good, it would be great if you actually had a device that could record video and then the ability to transmit it in relatively real time to some aggregation source.
Or even live streaming. I mean, there's a lot of people trying to do live streaming right now.
And I was not a fan of live streaming, and I've found increasingly that I now really watch it. I mean, one of the things that I think is really interesting about, there is this entertainment piece, and then there's this other piece, which is some hybrid of news, knowledge, data, experience, and we don't even know what to call it necessarily. But one of the things that I think is going to be really interesting is as people start having to make decisions about their time, I have a bunch of friends that are fly fishermen, and they're passionate about watching fly fishing video on the web. And I find that baffling. To me, it makes golf much more, why would you watch a guy in a stream with a pole not catching fish? And what they said to me when I finally asked that question was, the thing that makes me happiest is fly fishing. And if I can't be doing it, watching someone do it connects me to that experience. And I was like, okay, I get that. And so one of the things that I think will be really interesting is when what used to be entertainment time can now be some hybrid of watching events like this and watching fly fishing and then watching a couple of your favorite entertainment shows. I think news really does get reinvented in some interesting ways. And I love that the journalism school admissions are applications are way up. I think that's to me, that's the headline I take away from this panel. That's big news. People want to make content. That's great.
I just want to mention,
go ahead.
since you mentioned video streaming, if you have a BlackBerry, you can stream today using a program called QIK, Quick. Some of you have seen this. Yep. You can just pull out your BlackBerry, you download it. I did this with my 6-year-old twins were at an event. My wife couldn't be there. And first I thought I'd hold up the phone, which was kind of just to hear the audio. And then I said, wait, I heard of this thing. I downloaded it. And in 3 minutes, she was watching it back at the office. And I just texted her and said, go to this website. And she was able to watch this video. It wasn't very high quality, but that connection is very important. And that's where the conversation about quality is also important. That what we've heard is that people want perfection and high production values, but they will sacrifice if there's nothing else available, like you said. And there's another example with my kids that also talks about the stages. My kids were on a mega bus. Some of you know what that is. That's like the next generation-ish kind of competition to the Chinatown buses. They're going to Washington. And they saw Gilligan's Island for the first time on it. And they were fascinated by that. And they came home, and I wasn't on the trip with them. My wife was, and they said, we want to watch Gilligan's Island. And I said, well, it's not on TV. They said, let's go to the internet. And they knew that it would be there somewhere. And I wasn't sure it would be there, because it's, who knows. And we went on and we found it on a place, legal copies of, all whatever number of episodes. And they insisted on watching it every night. And they got bored and they moved on. But they loved it. And at that point, they were 5 years old. They didn't care whether it was a big TV. They just wanted to consume it. And that was interesting.
Right. Okay. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
My name is Dave Gaspar with a company called Diffuse, and we work on monetizing user-generated content online. And one of the points you guys have just made is essentially the debate of analog dollars for digital pennies. And aside from the inertia of the media buyers, the brands, the ad agencies, and everybody else, it really makes no sense that you would pay a quote-unquote $1 for an analog ad versus a penny for a digital ad. Digital is measurable. I know who's watching.
Okay, what's the question? What's the question?
How do you get the industry to change? Because it seems so simple. There are people out there who want to advertise this. There's some content online. The question is, how do you monetize it? The answer is there are brands who are willing to pay to have their brands out there, but they are doing it for pennies versus the dollars on it. And I guess the question is, one, why is that? And two, how do you change it?
Well, it is kind of silly, but premium video is going for very good rates, and Hulu's getting comparable rates, at least in theory, with quality content. The real
Can you give some numbers? I mean,
well, the eMarketer said recently that they're getting a 90% sell-through rate. Premium video publishers getting a 90% sell-through rate, and the CPMs could be $30, $35, even higher for specialist video. And they're talking about quality video, basically stuff that's made for other media but transported online. When you get to the second tier of video aggregators, you get $20 to $30 CPMs, and this is data from 6 months ago, I think, so it might be down. And you have only a 50% sell-through rate, so the effective revenue you're generating is lower. And then user-generated video is 10% or less, and part of that is because there's a fear of what's in it. I mean, even the Super Bowl advertisers, when the famous Janet Jackson session happened, that was a big issue for them, being associated with something that was negative to a lot of the country. The real issue is a comfort level in some ways, and also there's now so much inventory that is not very highly valued, and it's very difficult. Technically, it costs a lot to get to it, so people aren't willing to pay what they don't have to pay to reach content like that. They pay for premium content. It's going to be a matter of, as advertising dollars come back and start migrating online, as we can target those audiences better, supply and demand will take over. We've seen that happen with search and everything else.
And ultimately what happens is that the reason that we move more money on television is because there's more clutter, there's more ad inventory. And that's the beauty of the internet, is people like it because people watch Hulu, and we hear this from our stuff too. There's fewer ads than on TV. So in order to also ramp up those dollars, because it's the price per 1,000 is more online sometimes than is on TV, but the volume of ads is lower. Because that's the better experience. That's why people are watching it there. So the second you start cluttering that up, what does that do to your viewership? But that's what it's going to take to really with it. And when it comes to places like YouTube or video aggregators where you're not finding people who are watching for as long a time as they're on TV, you're just not hitting them with enough advertising messages. But the way to move it is to prove the effectiveness of it. That, someone is going to a website and choosing to watch a video as opposed to sitting by their TV and flipping through it and happening upon something. And, we know there's a lot of ad avoidance going on, so, a lot of times you're forced to see this pre-roll, but they're willing to sit through it, and we're finding that tolerance hasn't really waned yet, probably will. but, prove that people are seeking out this content. They're highly engaged in it, therefore the ad message is more effective. And, because you can, potentially see what they're doing afterwards or ask them what they're doing afterwards. And you have some metrics around, I like the product, if I find it more favorable, I'll go buy it.
Right. Let's just get some more questions. Okay, yeah, back there.
Hi, real quick, we've been hearing about format wars that exist in streaming today between the different players, Flash, Windows Media, Silverlight, where they are today, where you see that all going.
War's over. Flash won.
Flash is gonna win.
H.264 was a great Apple back channel trick with Adobe, and I don't know anybody that's, unless Microsoft's paying you, you're not using Silverlight.
Okay, yeah, sir, right here.
The question is, we've got journalism expertise, marketing expertise, obviously video expertise. Steve mentioned that Magnify obviously has all these channels, like the foosball channel and so forth. You also mentioned that you can just spin up something like Internet Week New York and cover all that video. What about when you're a branded player like New York Times, who got some backlash for having some user-generated, obviously it's a little weird when they have comments in the blog section, they tried video next to some of their stories, be kind of user-sourced or amateur. What risk do these brands have when they try and get the conversation happening within their brand? And what a brand like Current TV, where should they be on that spectrum?
That's a good question. Jeremy?
I think there's a big brand risk. Maybe it's more perceived, but brands have pulled out of shows for a lot of reasons. When someone was alleged to make a homophobic comment on some show, I don't even remember what it was, a lot of brands pulled out, and other brands would pull out for different reasons. The risk is too big for the potential reward of getting that incremental reach. So a brand that's trying to protect its value will always be a little bit more careful, but then you have more irreverent brands, you have smaller advertisers who, where in traditional TV they might not have access. I think that's really going to be another secret of success for the video online, is that Google search is successful in part because they allow small advertisers to participate. And as we reduce the cost of getting ads alongside that, or hopefully video ads themselves, into the market, there's a lot of people who are willing to take those risks.
Right, now were you asking about actual media brands having user-generated material on them?
Yeah, I'm saying there's I don't go to New York Times to see someone else filming the
Right. So that's from right.
So Current TV, for example, has all sorts of high-quality video on there, but it also lets a lot of people who they don't have anybody covering what's going on in Africa. They rely on users to do that. They do a
Right.
great job, I thought, but they need some quality standards if they're going to brand. So where should a brand like that be on the spectrum of like all user or all really high-quality quality stuff?
So I would propose that we kind of abandon the user-generated video name, because it's really, first of all, it was created by big media companies to kind of damn with faint praise all those squirrels on skateboards, and it's effective at that. And secondly, if you actually spend any amount of time looking at what's online, lots of it is actually either prosumer or pro. So for example, on the Taste of Home site, there's all this stuff from the Food Channel. Well, you scratch your head and go, wait a minute, did they steal that? Well, no, the Food Channel put it up on YouTube and clicked share, and the Taste of Home guys went ahead and put so like, we're in this kind of weird moment where there's lots and lots of professional makers, and the phrase that we increasingly suggest people think about is CVC, curated video content. And as long as the brand is touching it and saying, this meets our brand promise, you actually don't care where it comes from. And Current's a great example. I mean, a very, very large percentage of the content on Current is made by their audience, and they've done a really good job of incentivizing people to make good quality video for them. I think they pay $200.
Do they get ads though? Do they get ads, and how are their ads?
You know, I don't understand their economics, actually. It's a good question.
It goes under
I think
a book,
effective
great going
curation.
under. Right?
Yeah. All right, let's get another
There's
question.
somebody with a flip over there. You got
Yeah, this side, go ahead.
George Spiros. I have my own production company. I actually do stuff for CW, for Gossip Girl, and these pods of content and stuff like that. So you can sort of speak with a lot of the people struggling with those issues you mentioned. Anyway, one quick thing I'd throw in is a term, electronic field production. EFP instead of ENG, which if you look at The Office, which I believe is, for instance, shot on HD at this point, there's very little difference between what young people here and in the city can do with the prosumer cameras and whatnot, and that's a concept that's not getting bandied around. So I just throw that out. But my question is, pardon me. My question is this. Could you please speak to the notion of, potentially a sort of a correction between broadband and broadcast, where, much like we're seeing with GM, where the car makers are coming to Jesus and Tesla's going to win the day, and the industry is going to move to California. So my question is, would you see it being viable that that there'd be a scenario where broadband, as we talked about the connector and stuff, where broadband and broadcast just, MSOs get taken out of the loop, and that people start shutting off those boxes, and they say, I'm going to vote with my feet or my eyes. I'm going to turn off my box. I love HBO. I'm going to turn off my box. I'm going to wait till I can get Flight of the Conchords in all 22 episodes.
Sure.
So could you guys, in your expertise, talk about, could you really foresee that moment happening, a tipping point?
I actually am on the board of the Media Financial Management Association, which is basically broadcasters and cable folks and radio folks. And one of the big strategic concerns of smart broadcasters is we own all these TV stations. Most TV stations have a primetime block and lots of syndicated content.
Right.
If I can see every episode of Seinfeld online on Hulu or wherever, what is a owned and operated station group why are they going to bother to buy strips of Seinfeld for television if people, are starting to consume it equally on all the screens? It's a major issue for, what they're going to fill their hours with. And currently, cable changed a lot of the landscape in that each market could own a show. Whereas when you have the super stations, they're showing the same, they have the rights to Seinfeld in Atlanta, they're you can now get that in New York. That was a big challenge back then. And now we're seeing the same sort of challenge. A lot of the underlying financial structure will have to change in the way that content ultimately makes its money, since syndication is a huge way to recoup the cost of production. In terms of the cost of actually making the show is dropping, but the cost of distributing it and marketing it isn't necessarily going to drop. It may just shift. So I see that as a major issue.
So the syndication piece, as opposed to the loss of the cable subscription dollars from consumers.
Yeah, I mean, original content is still going to have value, and somehow it'll get paid for. Where you get it is almost, the networks, they distribute through broadcast stations or on cable or on the internet. They're not going to really hurt as much. It's just a matter of not pissing off the people paying the bills now while encouraging the people who are going to pay the bills tomorrow. But I think right now the real issue is what happens to the people who are the cable companies, who maybe want to command that premium, or are the TV station owners who maybe have less of a share. And nobody really knows the answer to that yet.
As to who's going to be paying the bills tomorrow.
Right.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions. Sir, right back there.
Yes, you talked about the quality of content and wanting good content versus low-quality content. How about the delivery mechanisms? You speak about things like files, just trying to put all this fiber stuff into the house, and also with the DCAS. Can you talk a little bit about that?
How many people are on FiOS?
People want to be.
How many people want to?
Well, I mean, I actually teach this, and so let me just say that in terms of the actual business model, I mean, FiOS, there is no way in hell FiOS will ever make any money. It's going to be bad, ugly, and I have no idea what they're thinking about. So it's pretty hard to have two or three pipes going in and competing against each other for the same consumer. I mean, technologically, we've talked about innovation. It's a big goddamn fixed cost that they're trying to put together and build, and it will be pretty. But then the real question is, they'll be cut out by people like Boxy or someone else who are coming in. So it's even uglier than when they started. So I don't know. We have time for one more question, so go ahead.
Yeah, I was recently watching a couple of episodes on Lost on ABC.com, and one episode, I think there was this pasta company that bought all of the spots, and I just saw the same 30-second spot, which is the TV spot that was repurposed there. And then on another episode, I saw some Toyota commercials that were actually interactive and had some kind of like boxing game where you could interact with it. And I was just wondering, I work at an online agency company, online advertising company, Atmosphere BBDO, and was wondering what kind of interactive ads or non-interactive ads have you seen that are popular on TV shows, on sites like Hulu or things like that?
Right.
What's actually working? What kind of best practices do you give to agencies?
I mean, the best practices don't air the same ad 6 times. And then they go, all right. So obviously it's an expense to any agency and advertiser to tailor their message to work for that environment. It is a very specific environment. It's not like, even short form, because you have to sort of sustain this through. That advertiser owns that whole episode. So the best practices are, at least have multiple pieces of creative in there, but the more interactive, and we have a lot of advertisers, we have a whole spectrum of the level of interactivity. And those that do, games during those breaks or, some sort of interactivity, it gets used. And all of the metrics that, the branding metrics that we ask people about in our survey after being exposed to that ad are, increased tenfold when they are more creative with this environment, when they tell a story with those ads, when they just offer a lot more content, coupons, things like that. And then people get annoyed when they're sitting there watching the same ad 6 times. They remember it, but not necessarily in a good way. So yeah, we have a whole set of best practices specifically for that full episode content. It works the same way on Hulu right now. But the other thing is those ad models are going to evolve, and it's probably going to happen very quickly as we're forced to make more money online. That digital pennies quote has actually changed. Jeff Zucker likes to say digital dimes now, which I guess it's coming up a little bit. Someday we'll get to quarters, whatever. But it's only going to happen when we figure out how to better monetize this content, and that's going to mean more ads, most likely. And it takes away that ownership, which works very well. The advertisers really like that. So I just think that we're in the middle of an evolution for the way that we monetize specifically that full episode stuff. And Hulu now has some models out there where you can choose a longer ad up front, not see anything else. And, we're going to be doing some of that. ABC has a couple of those too. So.
Right, and also, the whole idea of ad fatiguing, because you're in the business, it's just that the fatigue cycle is faster and faster right now. And that's the other small problem that you guys have. But of course, it's good, it's employment for you, because,
But what's funny is that even for those people who get annoyed with seeing the same ad 6 times, they still like it better than television. I mean, it's a different person we're speaking to than the people who watch online. They are heavy television viewers, but they're also heavy DVRs who avoid ads. So, we find that they're still like, well, it's still less time, and they can do something else. They can click away to something else.
Check my email during those 30 seconds.
Don't do that. Pay attention.
All right, I want to thank everyone for coming, and the speakers can stay for a few minutes if you want to speak to them afterwards. Thank you very much.